the thing is, I do believe there was talk about these things. I believe if we study history, the Confederates were able to shoot pterodactyls, back in the Civil War, and they spread these things out. Anybody can look it up online.
Google it
They
yourself.
spread these things out, and this is a historical fact. So, they spread this thing out, and it's got a huge winglet. It was a pterodactyl they shot. So, of course, these things have been around. Now, they went extinct, obviously, slowly, but surely. And so,
what I'm saying is Jesus wrote a dinosaur to work. That's history. It's in the Bible. How to Train Your Dragon.
Historical facts.
And if you don't believe it, do your own research. Pull up Google. You'll find the picture, I promise.
Oh my god.
Thank you, John Gleason, Godless engineer, for gifting me this beautiful moment. Y'all remember when they tried to cancel Steven Spielberg for posing with an animatronic triceratops animal rights activist?
Back it up.
Hit it from the back.
Cloaca. Historical facts.
Eat my ass, BP. You're down here bailing on the rest of us because you don't want to process your grief and shame like a normal person by drinking and mistreating strangers.
No, Rick. It is you who must nibble my cloaca, or bird asshole.
Everyone knows what a cloaca is.
back in the Civil War, and they spread these things out. Anybody can look it up online. They spread these things out, and this is a historical fact. So, they spread this thing out, and this has got a huge winglet. It was a pterodactyl they shot. So, of course, these things have been around. Now, they went extinct, obviously, slowly, but surely. And so,
Paul Bunyan was sharing some Funyuns with his pet velociraptor.
Whoa.
Oh, you thought it was an ox? Roll back the clock. Let me knock the socks off. Historical facts.
I didn't cut out. You heard me. You a pervert or something? Okay.
What's up, heathens? How y'all doing? I'm the Godless Engineer, and I critically analyze apologist claims to give you the best arguments and information so that you can stand up and use your voice. Tonight, we're going to be taking a look at a Q&A session that Frank Turek hosted. I originally shared this with the Skeptic Mafia. It was contained in a different video where this, apologist was kind of doing a recap and telling us why he's a horrible person at the very end. But we're not going to watch that. We're just going to focus on the actual Q&A that Frank Turek did. So, tonight, an atheist has a question for Frank Turek, and Frank is going to tiptoe and dance around the question, and he's not even going to fucking answer it. But what he will do is provide this atheist with reasons as to why you can answer yes to the question and not be a psychopath, I guess. So if you want to fuck around and find out what this question is, then please stay tuned. I always get my shoulders mixed up. Hold on. Yeah, it's an old man hair because I'm nearly fucking 40. That's what happens when you turn 40. You get gray hairs. You don't have gray? Well, I mean, some men do. Some people get gray hairs at 40. I'm just saying. Anyways, I have had gray hairs for a few years. Thank you for pointing out my little salt and pepper there, honey. All right, heathens. Well, tonight we're going to be going over this Frank Turek video, but we do actually have a full slate tonight, so we got to start getting through it. If you want to, you can send in super chats, and I will directly interact with y'all when you send in super chats. If you're new here on the channel, my goal is to be able to donate some money to charity, depending on how much we make in the month. It's been really skimp here lately, very, very thin on these kind of margins as far as being able to donate to charity. So please do consider sending in a super chat or joining the Skeptic Mafia. That also helps, and so that we can donate to a charity. If we were to donate to a charity, I'm not exactly sure what we would donate to this month, but we definitely let you guys know what we donate to. So with all that out of the way, like I said, we have a full slate tonight. We've got some comments to go through, but we also have some news to do first. Huh? It's Humpback Whale Awareness Month? Yeah. That works out. Yeah. Whale peen. Let's donate for the whale peens, y'all. It's also National Cancer Prevention Month. So we could do a cancer charity. That would be nice. So we've got news, we've got comments, we've got Brocephus. He got back from the Caribbean, so finally he had to hitchhike his way. He did that thing where you stick out your leg and like flag people down. But we got Brocephus stopping by to explain some shit to us, and then we got the actual response video. So if you guys are ready to fuck around and find out what everything's about this week, then let's head on into the news segment, shall we? I remember this song. Today I learned. So somebody, Eric in the chat says shitty ass news. Let's see if I can come up with the shitty ass news. Are you ready to lose faith in humanity? Yeah, I like that one too. That one's pretty good. I spanked myself. Monthly hangout for, I believe I missed last month, and that's just it was crazy last month. I was pretty busy and everything. We could totally do it. It would have to be either the 10th or the 24th. So I'll figure out which one's better for me, and I'll let you guys know. But it will be either the 10th or the 24th that we can hang out. Ideally, it would be next weekend, but I'm not exactly sure yet. I get. Oh yeah, that's right. We got Daniel's birthday party next weekend, so yeah, it definitely won't be too late. It'll be like middle afternoon. I'm not sure when we're planning on hosting the hour and a half time slot for him. Oh, he always eats at 5, right? Because he's an old man. I got it. If you're wondering what I'm drinking tonight, it's more Chattanooga straight bourbon whiskey. Just straight up drinking it. No mixer or nothing. All right, so we got some news to cover this week. Well, 3 news articles. We always had 3 news articles, just like the Today I Learned. But first up is the prayer breakfast. Mike Johnson, seen here being served a 3-course meal while he votes to further restrict free lunches from poor children, joined President Joe Biden at the prayer breakfast to practice what Jesus is known for. In fact, we definitely know this for a fact. It's in the red letters. I know how much you love the red letters, honey. That Jesus actually, The red text, whatever. I've heard it said red letters too. Anyways, Mike Johnson and Joe Biden, President Joe Biden, they both celebrated the prayer breakfast. We got Daniel M. who says, David says good night. Good night, David. I hope you have an awesome night and everything like that. Daniel, I hope you have a great weekend, and we'll definitely see all of y'all next week. Let's see, we should be getting a notification here soon, hopefully, if everything still fucking works. But anyways, so in the, what'd you say they're called? Red words? Red text. So in the red text of the Bible, and this is stuff that we definitely know that Jesus said, right? He said in Matthew 6, 5-6, you have been blessed by Christ. Now go forth and suck my dong. Jesus said in Matthew 6, 5-6, and when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray alone in their closets. Truly, I tell you, They will not receive their reward at all. But when you pray, make sure it's in front of everyone with the Fox News cameras rolling and pretend to care about those less fortunate than you, but really you just want them to suffer as much as possible. Oh, wait, honey, do you mean that is not what Jesus said in the Bible? Could he possibly have said, and when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what it is done in secret, will reward you. Weird. It's almost like this entire thing seems very performative for all of the parties involved and nearly a violation of the separation of church and state. But, you know, who the fuck am I to criticize this creepy fuck over here? Nobody cares about that creepy fuck? Oh, yeah, nobody cares about the violation. That's right. I mean, everybody up there would totally suck Jesus's dick if he walked through the door, except for, you know, Republicans, because they have this weird idea about if a historical Jesus existed, what he would look like, and they would definitely be like, I don't know, maybe deport him, is what Republicans would say. Anyways, so that's it. Prayer breakfast happened. It happens every year, and it pisses me off every year because the prayer breakfast shouldn't be happening. It's totally bullshit, and I do feel like it's a violation of the separation of church and state. It's definitely intermingling government and church, and I just don't think that should be happening whatsoever, so I'm bitter about it. Next up, we've got a Dark Brandon leak. Dark Brandon, seen here plotting his continued campaign to taunt Trump into going even crazier than he currently is being reported by Politico that Politico, and I have all these linked down below just in case you're curious in the description, quote, has described Trump to longtime friends and close aides as being a, quote, sick fuck who delights in others' misfortunes. To which many in the comments section of the tweet that was posted, pointing this out to people, asked, "Where's the lie?" Because it's really not a lie. Like that's completely accurate. I feel like it's totally accurate to call Donald Trump a sick fuck. And I have to agree that this makes Biden look a bit more competent. And he should just take to the stage and say that. But, you know, he's Catholic, so he probably won't do that for the fear of offending the magical wizard in the sky. They also claim that one of the three people to reveal Dark Brandon's true feelings about Donald Trump claimed that he said, "What a fucking asshole this guy is." To which I ask again, where is the lie? This is probably the most truthful thing any presidential candidate has ever said, but he won't even say it publicly. The White House declined to comment because the fucking statement stands on its own. And I wish Dark Brandon would come out and just flat out say it. Like, just take to the stage, do the little tappy on the microphone right here, like, he's a sick fuck. Y'all all know that, right? Like, I just wish that he would. Like, that would be such a fucking baller thing to do. What's Donald Trump gonna do? Take to the stage and call him, like, Sleepy Joe? Like, he's gonna call him Sleepy Joe, and Donald Trump's like, you sick fuck. Like, that would be totally baller. I would, like that. I feel like that would definitely pump his numbers up to the point that he needs to get them in order to be pretty secure in his run for president again. All right, so there's a Dark Brandon leak, and now we've got an update from something we covered last week, and that's God in the public schools. Pictured here is Senator Mays Middleton. He's in this representation of him, he's excitedly watching a pastor tell a raped high school student to forgive the rapist, have the rape baby, but also stop being the fucking whore that she is. He is one of the architects of the Texas public school chaplain law that allows pastors, preachers, and potentially pedophiles unrestricted access to public school children as chaplains. These chaplains effectively act as untrained counselors, and this Christian white male Middleton here has admitted why the law was created and passed in the first place. He said, quote, President Trump made it possible for us to go win some of these fights and put God back into government so people can freely exercise their religious beliefs in government and in schools. In this case, the freely exercise their religious beliefs means forcing God onto public school children regardless of their faith or non-faith positions. The entire point of the bill was to put God into schools. I'm sorry, but if God doesn't stop Father McFeely from fucking children in his rectory, then he's not going to do anything in the public schools. This is all just a bid for conservatives to force people to live the same way as they do, by sucking God and Pastor McFeely's dick. And that's what I have to say about this dipshit. Yeah, that's like, tell us how you really feel. Well, he's a sick fuck. Yeah, just like Trump, he's a sick fuck. Anyways, that's going to be it for the news today. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. I know I enjoyed talking about it. And now we are going to be getting on into comments. We got some comments to go over this week. And it's going to be very heavily themed by mythicism. So if y'all hate me for that, then fucking seethe in the comments right now. I do want to point out, I do want to point out that we have a clips channel. If you like more hyper-focused sort of 5 to 7 minute videos, you can go over there, subscribe, and you can get more hyper-focused on one particular topic or one particular argument, and you can get those videos over there. They're more reasonably length than the full-length videos that I post here on Godless Engineer, so definitely go and check those out. Now, for the comments, we have this one. These are all from Facebook, by the way. They hate the mythicist topic over there on Facebook, so I got a lot of juicy comments out of it. Dean Hill on Facebook says, Jesus was counted in Bethlehem after he was born. Well, shit, where's the fucking record for that? Like, I don't remember seeing that in our evidence. He was counted in Bethlehem? Like, do we have Roman records of them being like, all right, 2 poor fucks in an outhouse with 1 baby. Gotcha. His name is Jesus. Jesus what? Christ? Oh, fuck. Okay, Jesus Christ. Are you Mary Christ? Oh, no, you're not Mary Christ. You're just Mary, like Madonna. Okay, I got you. Mary, Joseph. Okay. Next. And then apparently that's in the Roman records for him. He is recorded by the Romans. Where is that? He would have been recorded by the Romans when he was born. The Romans what? Like he put the apostrophe there, so it's like this is a bit of unfinished. So I don't know the Romans what, the Romans dick. But in any case, this is a little bit redundant because if anybody was recording anybody in Bethlehem, it would have been the Romans. So he goes on to say he was recorded as being killed by the Romans. Romans what? Again, the Romans what? Like, you need to learn how to type correctly, I guess. I mean, I fuck up on occasion, but whatever. He's not recorded as being killed by the Romans. Nobody records contemporaneously that Jesus was killed by the Romans. I think the closest that you could say is maybe Tacitus, maybe Josephus, like... you could possibly say that, but, under most people's interpretation of Josephus, it's only partially interpolated, but I'm in the camp that thinks that it's wholly interpolated, and that particular camp is growing largely every single day. And so it's really Tacitus that talks about it, but that could be an interpolation too. There's really nobody else before those weren't even before the Gospels. Like, all of those were influenced by the Gospels. So, I mean, we don't really have any kind of indication that any Romans ever, recorded Jesus' death. We get Daniel M. With the super chat saying, my brother-in-law wanted to try...
Jesus loves the little children, maybe a little too much.
My younger brother-in-law wanted to try and convert me. He used Frank Turek apologetics. It was funny. And you can always tell when it's Frank Turek apologetics, because Frank Turek has these rhetorical things that are easy to remember, and you have people that spout it out, and you can tell, oh, that's Frank Turek. Like, you're just a Frank Turek clone. Like, I don't want to hear from Frank Turek. Frank Turek's a dipshit. So, you know. Anyways, thank you so much there, Daniel, for the super chat. I appreciate you, man. Even the Chinese wrote about him. What? The Chinese wrote about Christ? He's buried in China? Yeah, I mean, I think that's one, but I think the Chinese Jesus is one too. I don't know what he means by the Chinese wrote about him, and I don't also know how the Chinese would even fucking know about him. Japan Jeezy? Okay. There is no question he exists. Actually, there is. I mean, there's 2 peer-reviewed monographs that actually lay out the case for either doubting Jesus existed, or explaining why you should doubt that Jesus existed, like presenting the possibility and the plausibility that he didn't. People just make statements with no research. Actually, there's a intense amount of research that's involved in this. You have to know like several different topics in order to be able to understand like the argument, really, and or at least to make the argument. Maybe not to understand the argument, but to make the argument in a coherent fashion. You have to deal with multiple different topics. You got to deal with Hellenistic religions, which would include mystery religions. You got to deal with Jewish ideology that pre-existed Christianity. And then you have to deal with how people in first century Palestine learned how to write, by going to pagan schools and being taught to copy these classical works like the Iliad and Odyssey and all this other stuff, but change it enough to where it's your own story, but it's still structured in the same way. There's that, like there's many facets which you have to deeply understand in order to make the argument. But it is very easily put together. So yeah, Dean Hill is just a dipshit. Next up, we don't have too many of these, and we'll get through them kind of quick. Carl Mason says, no modern historian is going to agree with the statement that Jesus didn't exist. Give me a break. Even atheists concede as much. Let's see. Michael Beverly sent in 100 saying, I'm just giving because I'm depressed and avoiding work, and I don't like Frank Turek. Yeah, fuck Frank Turek, and send a super chat, and I will say that right now. Fuck Frank Turek. I tagged him in the title of this, so somebody may have gotten notified about it. Fuck you, Frank Turek. There you go. Thank you so much, Michael.
Jesus loves the little children. Maybe a little too much.
Yep, definitely a little bit too much. So, like, no modern historian is going to agree with the statement. So, I feel like this is a bit wrong-headed because we're not talking about all historians. Obviously, historians outside of the New Testament and biblical kind of area, which would include historians studying like first century Roman society and first century and even more ancient than that, Roman history and Judeo-Christian history and all this other stuff. Like there is a wide range of historians that would have meaningful input on this, but I feel like encapsulating all historians into this is really broadening your pool a little bit too much, because those outside of this expertise area are just going to agree with the mainstream view of it. The mainstream view of it is set by these fundamentalists that control this entire segment of scholarly work. And this control, while it has some leniency at times and is stricter at times, they still control like the scholarship that goes on in New Testament and biblical studies. And so you really have to take into consideration when you make claims like this. Now, that's not me saying, oh, well, mythicism isn't popular because there's some kind of conspiracy. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the scholarship is definitely dictated by these fundamentalists, and even if you were to just count the secular scholars out there, they are somehow being controlled by this fundamentalist sect in New Testament studies. Not to mention the fact that plenty of the schools that offer degrees in this area, they require statements of faith of both their students and staff. So there's an obvious problem in it, and it's been identified for the longest time that there is still a problem in New Testament studies. So this has no effect on me whatsoever. Atheists concede as much. Yes, a lot of atheists do. And depending on the argument, I will at times as well. Like if we're discussing why Jesus didn't resurrect from the dead or why Jesus' resurrection isn't true, I will automatically assume, yeah, sure, Jesus existed and he died. Let's even go as far as to say he was crucified. Even though I personally don't believe there's any evidence for that, I'm fine like making that a presumption in order to refute some argument that has nothing at all to do with Jesus' historicity. And if anybody is out there saying, well, Jesus couldn't have resurrected because Jesus never existed, that's not even true on minimal mythicism, because in minimal mythicism, what is hypothesized about the first Christians is that they believe that Jesus had a physical body, a physical human body that was made by God, and this physical human body was crucified, was buried, and was resurrected, and everything like that. So there, even on minimal mythicism, there is a resurrection. It just occurred in the firmament instead of on earth. And it was done by demons rather than, well, Satan and his demons, rather than the Romans. And so that's the minimal mythicist hypothesis for an alternative explanation for how Christianity began. So, I mean, it's a really nuanced thing, and it really depends on what is being discussed. Next up is, Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do, don't I? Next is Bill Duckworth. Says, prove to me that Julius Caesar existed without using Roman text. Well, actually, we do have plenty of evidence that Julius Caesar existed. For one thing, we've got Roman coins that have Julius Caesar's like image on it with his name on it and everything. Not only that, but there are events in history that just simply wouldn't have happened, or things that we know happened that we have physical evidence for that wouldn't have been there if Julius Caesar didn't exist, and things of that nature. We also have reports from from the enemies of Julius Caesar about Julius Caesar. So this is just a really poor thing to like discuss, or at least challenge mythicism with. Like, prove to me Julius Caesar existed. Using the basics of historical research, you can prove Julius Caesar existed without using any of Caesar's firsthand writings or any Roman records at all. Nissan Catron says, go ask Google's Bard or ChatGPT, and both will tell you nearly all historians agree there was a man named Jesus during those days that was probably executed. Yeah, very astute observation, honey. That's obviously how we determine the truth here, is we ask ChatGPT and Bard. So yes, Bard and ChatGPT are going to tell you what the consensus among the experts are. And the current consensus does say that Jesus existed in history. And so I've never tried to hide that or whatever, but it also has no effect on the arguments that I make, because the arguments that I make are challenging that. So what we have to do is shift from what the consensus is to what does the evidence show us. And so when I make an argument about, like, let's say Paul never met Jesus. He never knew any disciples, and he only knows of Jesus through revelation and scripture. Those are the only sources. And Paul is our only first-hand, like, a contemporary source that would have been able to report Jesus existing. And the only thing that he tells us is hallucinations. And so, like, when I make that kind of argument, you now have to deal... You're okay, hon. You now have to deal with the evidence of that argument. You can't just say, Jesus existed because everybody says so. Like you can't do that. Finally, on the comments, we got Scott Etherton, who says, no, serious historians say Jesus existed. Oh, well, fuck, honey. Did you know that serious historians say it? Very serious. Again, appeals to authority or appeals to popularity or appeals to the consensus are not going to work because the mythicist hypothesis directly attacks the evidence that we have. So you have to shift your arguments to the evidence rather than what the consensus is. Polly Pocket says, weren't there a lot of Jesuses back then? Yes, there were. That is another good observation there. There were a lot of Jesuses. And so you have to be very specific about what Jesus you're talking about, because there were plenty of Jesuses that, like recorded by Josephus that are actually in the past. And so what we're looking for is a Jesus that gathered a number of followers, that preached a controversial message that pissed off the Sanhedrin.
Jesus loves the little children, maybe a little too much.
Pissed off the Romans or pissed off the Sanhedrin to make the Romans crucify him, or he pissed off the Romans to get crucified or something like that. And then some of his followers revived the religion later. Like, it's a very specific Jesus that we're talking about here. So you do have to like set your definitions like early in the conversation. Typically that's what people mean when they talk about Jesus existing though. And so I don't usually ask them to define what Jesus they mean, because I guess I just automatically assume that very basic structure is what they're talking about. Statistics has nothing to do with it. Statistics actually has a lot to do with history, because what you're talking about is what most probably happened in the past. And in order to talk about what most probably happened in the past in some kind of fashion, whether you're using exact numbers or not, you still have to use the language of statistics in order to communicate what most probably happened. Me just saying what most probably happened is using statistical language. So statistics definitely has something to do with how we view history, how we make historical conclusions. Of course, they do not believe in the Jesus of the Gospels because they are pagans, the enemies of God. No, I mean, they don't believe in the Jesus of the Gospels because the Gospels are fictional narratives. Like, they're not historical at all. They're not eyewitness accounts or anything like that. So there's no reason to take them as being historical, and that's why people don't believe the Jesus of the Gospels. Plus, he does magic. They believe in magic. Cosmos appeared out of nowhere and not faith. No, I mean, that's not magic. Like, the cosmos appearing out of nowhere, that's not what the scientific theory says about the beginning of the universe, or any of the hypotheses about the beginning of the universe says about it. So fucking educate yourself. But also, if you're a Christian, then you believe in magic. I believe in magic. Hold on, let me try to play this. I believe in magic. A Jew killed himself to save me from his daddy's opinion. Just saying, like, it's magic. Like, if you're sacrificing somebody in order to change somebody's mind about this sin thing, that's magic. Like, that's a magical effect. The last time I checked, when I bled, nothing happened other than I had to clean it up, and I had to wash my hands and shit. So, anyways, Jesus has nothing to do with magic. He has a lot of like, did you read the Gospels? Like, that's magic. Like, magic. So, like, let me just ask real quick. Like, if I were to have a ball in my hand, and then all of a sudden I did some illusory shit, and then now I've got two balls. Is that not magic? Is that not a magic trick? Jesus did that a couple of times in Mark with loaves and fishes. He basically multiplied them just like that. And so that's magic. Like, if you were to point to one magical thing that fucking Jesus did, that was it. There's also walking on the water, healing blind people that are probably not really blind, like those stage faith healer people. But in any case, all right. So, nothing is what they finish off with. Nothing. Obviously, I'm the one that's an idiot in this situation. Obviously. Ah, shit, that went away. Good thing that we're done because it fucking disappeared on me. Anyways, are y'all ready for Brocephus now? Yeah, you're like, get on with the show, fuckhead. All right, well, I hope you guys are ready because Brocephus is coming back with a vengeance.
Shitty ass science! We're gonna answer some science shit really wrong. What's up, girl?
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I just got back from the Caribbean. Yeah, it was fun down there. I drunk me some cervezas and shit. Oh, I see. We got some nice little bourbon here, too. I'm going to drink it. GE, I'm drinking it. He's probably in there shitting his brains out. Was it unnecessary or was it very necessary? Because I feel like it's very necessary at this point. All right. Let's see. What do we got here? Living fossils. Many living fossils, such as crocodiles, once shared the same world as dinosaurs. Since humans continue to live with crocodiles today, it is reasonable to believe that humans also shared the same world with dinosaurs. You have been blessed by Christ. Now go forth and suck my dong. Bruce in the chat. The Bible is full of magic. It's a soft magic system, as it has not clearly defined rules like Lord of the Rings. The magic is just there. Yeah, exactly. The magic is just there. Huh? Yes, this is from the Dipshit Museum. That's right. Yeah, probably. I mean, we took a lot of. I mean, you and GE took a lot of pictures there. I just heard about it. Anyways, crocodiles. This makes no fucking sense whatsoever, okay? I'm a Christian through and through, but this is some dipshitty shit right here, okay? It doesn't follow that because crocodiles existed in the past, therefore humans always existed in the past. And you know why?
Why?
Because, and I this is legit, you can look it up, okay? You're about to be stunned by this.
Okay.
Crocodiles are bisexual. And what's more magical than bisexuals out there? Okay, here's my proposal for explaining this, okay? So basically, crocodiles being bisexual, there was a study done. Hold on, I forgot to explain that. I need more whiskey for this. Okay, look, there was a study done, okay, where they observed these crocodiles, right? And they made a list of who the crocodiles fucked. Now, I don't know what kind of sick kink this was where they were watching crocodiles fuck, but they made a note of each crocodile and who the crocodile fucked, and then they tallied it up. And wouldn't you know it, they had male on female, and then they had male A on male B, and then male B on male A. Can you guess what that means? No, you can't? I'll tell you.
Sorry, I didn't know you were talking directly to me.
So,
I thought you were just talking to everybody.
excuse me, hold on. So, male A and male B. Male A is going to be the larger male. Okay. Male B is the smaller male. Okay, different sizes. I get maybe. So when they were tallying them up, they made sure to figure out who was pitching and who was catching. All right, and so male A pitched when it was male A and male B, and then male A caught when it was male B / male A. And so they would switch up, like a switch hitter. Okay. And so, but there were also, male and female and everything like that. But basically the crocodiles will just fuck whatever their little weird dicks. I don't know if they got weird dicks. Whatever their dicks will fit in as far as crocodiles go, they'll do it. Okay, so here's my suggestion. Bi crocodiles are magical, all right? Like all other bi creatures, including, lions. And so what they did was when they were here on the earth and they saw the asteroid coming, they was like, oh, this can't be good. What they did was they cast a magic spell on themselves, right? And that protected them from the devastation of this asteroid or whatever in the fuck wiped out the dinosaurs. And so they cast a magic spell. They raised up their little arms, they went, and it was like, I'm protected, you know? And that's what happened. And you know how they protected them? Well, they formed these like magical bubbles around them that protected them from the initial fallout of everything, right? And then also it put them in stasis so that they could just live and not be affected by any of the changes on the earth. And that's how they survived. And that has nothing to do with humans walking with dinosaurs. You know, GE might come back and tell y'all that these crocodiles, you know, while they were living back then, they had some kind of weird fucking thing, naturalistic something or another. I don't know, but what I do know is that they're magical as shit. They had protective bubbles, and that's just proved by science. Okay? I proved it right here with the science, okay? All right. Yep. So anyways, that's how you explain these living fossils, and has nothing to do with, you know, humans walking with dinosaurs that we have no evidence for. But we do have evidence for magical bubble spirit magic. Anyways, I guess that'll be it for me tonight. You heathens, I hope you have an awesome night. I am going to go and get me some of this Chattanooga whiskey. It's so good. All right, I'm outie 5,000. I'll see you heathens later. Go fuck off. Did you tell my audience to fuck off again? This is your first time back? You want to get fired?
You can't fire him.
Honey, take his blanket.
No.
Hey, what are you doing taking my blanket? That's my blanket. I'm going to go curl up with some Bud Light now. Think about how magical bi people are.
I thought you were getting whiskey.
Well, I'm going to get whiskey, and then I'm going to get, you know, fucking whiskey.
All right.
Did this fuck drink out of my whiskey?
No.
No? Are you sure? Maybe not. I don't know. I'll have to go back and look at the recording. Hey, have y'all seen my bullets? Whiskey stones? Pure America right there. All right. So just to add a little bit of science to this, because I know Brosif has brought up some bullshit about magic. There's several things that allowed crocodiles to survive the extinction event of the dinosaurs. One of those primarily being that they're very adept at multiple different environments. So they can survive in a lot of different environments. Also, their reproductive, the method in which they reproduce allows them to lay eggs in various locations. Their parenting style of crocodiles being that they what they do is they'll protect their young and they'll protect the eggs and everything like that. Also promoted survival. Another thing is that they were amphibious. That allowed them to pull from many different food sources. Them being amphibious allowed them to sort of hide out in the water, and the extinction event that killed off the dinosaurs had minimal effects on like the sea life, the sea creatures and whatnot. And so with crocodiles being amphibious, they were able to stay in the water and escape some of the devastation that was brought down on terrestrial life. And so all of these things, their metabolism too. So the metabolism plays into it a good bit. They have a slower metabolism, which means that they need a lesser amount of food in order to survive. And so when food is scarce, crocodiles have a pretty resilient method for surviving on low foods, a low amount of food sources. So all of these things kind of factor into how crocodiles were able to survive an extinction event. So this makes no sense. Like, that's how they survived. But what we're actually talking about here is the logic of, if crocodiles survived the extinction, then so did humans. And the problem with that is that we don't have evidence of humans existing before 200 to 300,000 years ago. I think it's around 200,000 years. That's when the first humans sprung up. When the dinosaurs went extinct, it was that we were actually, not we, but what would become humans was actually in sort of this shrew-like state. It was kind of a proto-shrew sort of mammal. And so there's just simply no evidence to suggest that because that humans were existing alongside dinosaurs. Now, of course, like the living fossil stuff right here, they're not mentioning the fact that they think that the Earth is 6,000 years old. They think that dinosaurs were on the ark, and they also think that humans hunted dinosaurs to extinction. Those are pretty big things to factor in there. And so saying that, oh, well, you know, crocodiles survived the extinction of the dinosaurs. It's like, yeah, because y'all think that humans hunted the dinosaurs for whatever fucking reason into like extinction. Have you not seen fucking Jurassic Park? We just watched it before we came on the show tonight, and I can guarantee you that primitive people were not taking down a fucking velociraptor. Well, velociraptors back then were smaller and everything, not the velociraptors in there. But definitely the T-Rex was going to fuck people up, and other animals would also fuck them up. So, you know, I'm just saying, like, it's really fucked up. Anyways, that's going to be it for the TED Talk tonight. So I hope you guys enjoyed Brasifa's coming back. Hopefully we can keep up the content so that he can come back and grace us with his presence. Now, are y'all ready to get to the actual response video?
I'm ready.
Casey's ready. Casey's like, fucking get it over with already. It's 7 minutes. I Spank Myself says, air horses are more fucking magical, goddammit. What is air horses? How do you pronounce that? It's a super chat that I Spank Myself did. Oh, aromantic asexual. Aroace is an informal term for someone who is both aromantic and asexual. You have been blessed by Christ. Now go forth and suck my dong. Which, I mean, speaking about, you know, the aromantic and asexual, and then Jesus pops up with suck my dong. That's, woo, okay. I do? Yeah, I do, don't I? It's because I know how he would speak. All right. So, I'm starting this about 15 seconds in. Frank Turek is about to take a question from apparently a repeat questioner, Cody. And Cody has a very specific question for Frank that Frank is not going to answer. You ready, hon?
Dr. Turek, God commanded you to murder your wife or children to prove your faith in God. Is your current devotion not enough to prove your faith? Must you murder your children as Abraham was instructed?
Now, I can already tell how somebody would answer this, and that's I've got a pretty good example. Mike Winger, he was proposed somewhat similar question, not like his family or anything, but just like if God asked you to kill somebody, would you? And he said unequivocally, I would follow what God says. So he didn't say yes, but he answered with a convoluted way to say yes. And so basically what the apologetic in response to this is, and why I probably wouldn't ask this question of any apologist, is that they would say, well, what I would do is I would follow what God tells me. But I know God wouldn't ask me to do that. Not since Jesus gave his life, God wouldn't ask me to kill another person. And so that would be the apologetic to answer back with. That's the way to answer the question in the affirmative, but also explain why you would never have to answer that question with a yes. And so it's a masterful dodging technique there to claim that you know what God is going to ask of you. Because if you remember, honey, I don't know if you remember, if you've ever encountered this, but you'll get a lot of times where Christians or apologists will say, well, we can't know the mind of God, so we don't know why he's causing the suffering. But then all of a sudden, this shit happens, and it's like, oh, but I know this part of God's mind. Like, I definitely know he would not ask me to do this. And so it's kind of a weird balancing act there, because, like, they don't know God's mind, and it would be ridiculous to claim that you know God's mind, but also I know God's mind enough that he wouldn't do this, which is totally false. You call it bullshit. It's a weird bullshit balancing act. You got to balance the bullshit evenly. And this is one of those situations where it'll trip them up pretty bad. So let's see how Frank Turek answers this.
First of all, I don't know what I would do.
This is a simple yes or no question, Doc.
I don't know what I would do in Abraham's position. That's a good question. You know who really struggled with that? Soren Kierkegaard, who wrote a book called...
Is your
I don't know if y'all heard Casey, but she says he doesn't know what he would do. I would divorce him immediately. Right. How do you seriously say, I don't know what I would do?
In public, I don't know if I'd kill my kids and wife or not.
Yeah. Do you want to get on the mic?
No.
Okay. I find it to be pretty hilarious that he's like, I don't know what I'd do if somebody asked me to kill my son. Can you imagine the son is over there like, what? Dad, come on. Don't say that, Dad. Because I can tell you right now, and this is how I know that I'm better than Frank Turek right here, at least in this respect. If somebody asked me, hey, if some magical fuck in the sky said, hey, I need you to kill your son as a sacrifice to me because I'm bored and I need free smells. Like, you know, like
Jimmy John's God.
Yeah, it's we're not a fucking Jimmy John's. That's right. So, like, you know, that happens, and I'm just like, fuck no, I wouldn't. And I'm sure my son is very appreciative that I would answer without any kind of hesitation. Like, no, I'm not going to kill my son. What the fuck are you doing? Like, that's how quick without missing a beat. Just no, I would not. Frank here is in a moral conundrum. And he's got a serious moral problem with the question, should I kill my family or should I not kill my family? God's asking me to do it. If I don't do it, then I'm sinning and I'm going to hell. If I do it, then I'm killing my son. Oh no. Working my hands to the bone in the fidget mines, says Forrest Valkai. When in doubt, dissect the boy. Okay, is that something Forrest says? I haven't heard him say that, but that I guess that kind of sounds like Forrest, maybe. Thank you there, working my hands. I'm sure a thing is going to pop up here in a second. Anyways, let's continue.
Your faith strong enough to murder your
Hold
own
on,
children
Cody,
or
I'm
wife?
thinking, and since I'm from New Jersey, it's really hard for me to do, so give me a minute.
Okay. You have been blessed by Christ. Now go forth and suck my dong. Yeah. He did. He was trying to be funny. But I just as a little bit of a critique, if you're ever in the situation where you're in a Q&A with an apologist, if you ask them a question and they're trying to answer it, but they're having to think about something, whether they're trying to think about something that's like totally off topic or not. I mean, I don't think that like pushing them and rushing them to answer the question is really a good strategy, because optics are pretty important when you know that it's going to be like posted online or posted for, you know, his audience. And so not rushing him, not being perceived as a dick, I think, and being a cordial interlocutor, I feel like is a better tactic than like just being very pushy about it. Sorry, I got to take my insulin stuff. We got another super chat anyways. Sorry. Daniel M says, holy crap, is that the first time Frank is honest? Well, I don't know. I think Frank is honest some of the time. Like, I think that he's honest when he says that. You have been blessed by Christ. Now go forth and suck my dong. I think Frank is honest when he talks about how, he doesn't believe in evolution. I think he's honest about a lot of stuff that he preaches to college students, but I think that there's possibly a lot of dishonesty in that as well. Like just dishonest in his argumentation, dishonest in just a lot of the statements that he makes. But I don't think that this is the first time he's been honest as far as like whether or not he would kill his child. But I do think that Frank needs to take a hard look at how he makes these kinds of decisions, because he is obviously a bit fucked up.
The book is called Fear and Trembling by Soren Kierkegaard. So I don't know what I would do, just like I'm never going to say if somebody put a gun to my head or a gun to my wife's head, what would you do?
I mean, I would do whatever it took in order to make sure that my wife and child did not get shot. Like if somebody put a wife to my somebody put a gun to my wife's head and they were like, "Give me all your money now," or whatever. I would do whatever was reasonably possible to save my wife. Like I say reasonably possible because it's like fucking rape this woman, and it's like, or I'll shoot your wife, and like I feel like that's not reasonable. But I mean, I would what? Yeah, it is all a lot. I'm just trying to say, like, I would do what I could to save my wife. Like, Frank, though, is like, I don't know what I'd do.
Because Peter tried that. I'll never deny you, Lord. And what did he do?
He fucking denied him. Daniel M. says, I meant him saying it is hard for him to think. Oh, yeah. I mean, that is pretty that is an honest statement, I feel. It's hard for him to think and come up with this bullshit.
He denied him 3 times. Yes, at the crucifixion.
I don't know what I would do, okay? But let me point out, if your friend is an atheist.
Woo! That's KC's money.
You got money.
There's nothing wrong with God doing anything, because by atheism, there's no standard of right and wrong anyway.
See, I feel like any topic you bring up to Frank that concerns like, is this right or wrong? It's going to boil down to him saying that you don't have any kind of basis for morality in your life, which is not accurate. He also says that we steal from God, which I think that he may bring up here in a minute. But this is totally wrongheaded, because even Christians are subjective in what they consider to be right or wrong. And you'll hear it here in a second, but the way that apologists like Frank Turek justify like killing people and murdering people and everything like that is totally disingenuous and just moves the goalposts. Like it's a special pleading argument. And so basically, Christians have just as a subjective moral foundation as atheists do. If they didn't have a subjective moral foundation, then they would still be keeping slaves as property. They would still be subjugating women in the house. Some of them still do. Some of them feel like marital rape isn't an actual thing. A lot of them have these like weird fucking ideas about the importance of consent and all this other stuff. So, I mean, so some of them are quite regressive, but as far as Frank goes here, I feel like Frank, this is one of those parts where he's being a bit disingenuous, because it's very obvious that I have had to figure out what I think is right or wrong. And I base my morality in a whole number of sources, including my experiences, where I was brought up, the society that I'm in, the time and place that I'm born in, and all this other stuff shapes my moral foundation. But Frank is just like, I got a book called the Bible, and it tells me kill is not good. But sometimes kill is good when God says it's good. And so I feel like that's essentially what Frank's moral foundation is. It's just whatever God says is good, and whatever God doesn't like personally is bad, which
is divorced from our modern concept of morality. See, this is what a lot of apologists do, is they'll conflate this idea of what God likes and doesn't like, or what God thinks is good and what God thinks is bad, with our actual sense of morality. And in actuality, both of those things are divorced from one another. Our sense of morality has some overlap with what God thinks is good and bad, but one does not correlate to the other in a one-to-one manner. It's very obvious that, our moral sense exists opposite of this God definition in the Bible. If it didn't, then some people out there would still have a moral sense of Christians in the first century, which would include the things that I listed earlier: chattel slavery, rape on multiple levels, and all this other stuff. And so, because we don't associate that with a modern sense of morality, it's very obvious that our modern sense of morality is divorced from this concept of what God likes. And it's very obvious that our sense of morality informs us as to what God should like and not like. And so I feel like Frank here thinks that he's making a good argument, but he's actually being very disingenuous with it. I feel like anybody with a reasonable sense of logic should recognize how disingenuous it is. If Frank has that, then he's definitely being disingenuous. Or there's the equally likely option that he just fully believes in this, and he fully believes in his own bullshit, which may be more likely, but I don't know. Because I don't know Frank. He seems like a dipshit, but he could not be in some kind of way. I don't know which way, but...
So in order for you to bring up the objection, you're actually stealing a standard from God in order to try and say God doesn't exist.
See? You would have to steal from God in order to say that it's not good. But in actuality, as far as murder goes, which is kind of what we're talking about here, there's several ways in which we can actually justify murder as being bad. There's social contract theory, which, has this idea of mutual cooperation as a functional or fundamental foundation of a functioning society. And there's that. There's also the evolution of morality, like how morality factors into a social species. There's empathy and compassion, how that factors into the growth of a social species. And there's several different things that you could ground this sense of murder is bad in, that doesn't include God. So it's very obvious that we're not stealing from God in this respect, because God in the Bible actually condones killing and murdering people. And God does his fair share of killing and murdering people in the Bible. There was one part where he fucking throws a lightning bolt at a couple of dudes. One of the dudes dropped the Ark of the Covenant. The Ark of the Covenant got dropped, and this dude was trying to save it, and God was like, "The fuck are you doing?" Zeused his ass. And then another guy was, fucking his dead brother's wife, and then he pulled out and splooged on the ground. And so God's like, "The fuck are you doing?" Zeused his ass right there. And so, there are times when God directly kills somebody. But there's also times where God mandates that the Israelites should kill somebody, which is going to be a very important distinction here in a little bit. But my point is that God saying "thou shalt not murder," or even the mistranslation of "thou shalt not kill," is not exactly accurate, because it's got an asterisk next to it. Because in the asterisk says, "Thou shalt not kill unless God tells you to kill." Then you murder the fuck out of those people. You kill them, utterly destroy them all. And that's it. Notice Frank still hasn't actually answered the question yet. Other than, I don't know, maybe. Maybe that's the answer. Maybe the answer is, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I would kill my son, which I think is a pretty pathetic answer in its own right.
Dr. Turek, I'm only asking if you would murder your wife or children to prove your devotion. It's a simple question.
I don't know what would happen. And by the way, when God decides that someone should die, it's not murder for him.
It's not murder for him. Here's the special pleading argument. I mean, all these arguments can really be boiled down to a few fallacies. And this particular argument of it not being murder for God is really just special pleading. He's moving the goalpost on what it means to murder somebody. And in this respect, I feel like Frank really missed his mark here, because in crap, I think it was Judges. In Judges, Jephthah makes a pinky swear to sacrifice the first thing that comes out of his house if God allows him to defeat these people. When he gets home, of course, the first thing to run out of his house is his daughter, and so he has to murder his daughter in order to sacrifice the child to God, essentially child sacrifice. And so it's very obvious that God is, one, fine with child sacrifice in the appropriate context. So it's not really child sacrifice just outright that God has a problem with. But two, Frank Turek missed an opportunity to bring up this story as like a way to justify saying yes to I'd murder the fuck out of my child, because God would have required me to in some kind of fashion, which I think is the real answer here, because with Frank's moral foundation, the only answer that he can give without going to hell is, yes, I would do what God wants me to do. That's exactly what Jephthah did, and that's exactly what Abraham was prepared to do. So him saying, I don't know, is not really truthful, I feel, because if he really is true in his conviction to the Bible and his conviction to God, then he would definitely sacrifice the fuck out of his wife and child. He would.
Because God kills all of us at some point, and he's the only one that can resurrect us.
I like how it's God kills everybody at some point. Like Carl Weathers, I guess may he rest in peace. I don't know if atheists really say that. Whenever I talk about somebody that just died, I always say, well, they passed. And, may they rest in peace and all this other stuff. Because, I mean, that's just part of my background. Like, that's just how I was brought up to think about it. And so it's weird. Anyways, Carl Weathers died in his sleep. He passed away peacefully. He died peacefully in his sleep. And that's horrible. I hate that he passed away. I'm glad that he passed away like that, like instead of being in pain and everything. But apparently God killed him. And that's what God, like, it's not that he just died of natural causes. God made the active decision that Carl Weathers should die. Like, can you just process that? Like, if you were a Christian and it's like, my husband died. Well, God killed him. But it's not bad that God killed him because of something that Frank is about to bring up that's pretty horrible. Yeah, you're not supposed to be mad at God when he kills people. But I think that it's a bit ridiculous to think God is responsible for all of the deaths, like everybody that dies of natural causes. Like, I feel like it's not inherently part of Christian theology that if you die, God is the reason you died. I haven't heard it either as a Catholic, which I know I was a poor Catholic. I got it. I know, I did. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to portray that as her saying it. I was thinking to myself, oh, you're a Catholic, but you were a shitty Catholic. That's what was going on in my mind. So I was Catholic and I was Protestant at various points in my life. And I never heard of that. I've heard of, oh, well, God called him home. But that's always like in reference to like an unexpected death. Not
That's very different than God killed him.
Right. It's like if God hadn't have made that decision, he'd still be alive. But in actuality, he just died of natural causes, like either the husband or Carl Weathers. Yes, it is very weird.
So we don't have the right to murder people, but God has the right to kill people anytime he wants. He can strike me down today, tomorrow, anytime he wants, and it's completely in his prerogative.
Wow. You know what that sounds like to me? Yeah. I feel like you just described what is it called? Is it OneNote? No, it's not OneNote. OneNote is a Microsoft application. What's the anime that has a notebook where you write the names in it? I can't remember. It's something Note. Death Note. Death Note. That's what it's called. Death Note. Thank you. It's been so I watched the anime. I hated the movie on Netflix, but I watched the anime and I just couldn't remember the name. But anyways, you just described the anime Death Note because this kid Light finds a notebook that he can write names in with dates and times, and they'll just die. And so, I mean, that's kind of like making a request to God there. Yo, I need to find one of those Donald Trump today. Donald Trump right now choking on dick.
I don't care how. It's necessary for the protection of this country.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like a psychopath to me. Like, this is psychopathic. Like, God can make a decision to take me now, and it's perfectly fine. And God just sounds like a psychopath, but also you can tell the kind of toxic and abusive relationship that Christianity inflicts on a person. Like, if you're seriously so abused in your religion that you're standing up there in front of a crowd of a lot of people saying, yeah, he can kill me whenever, I don't care. Like, that is a sign of being so toxically abused. Yeah, and I deserve it. That's a big thing. And I deserve it. You're so toxically abused that you're basically thinking that you deserve this, and you're fine with dying for no reason at all.
God has the right to slaughter the Amalekites down to the last man, woman, and child.
God has the right to take us out anytime we want, because if Christianity's true, men don't really die. We just change location.
We don't die. We just change location. We just transport to a different area. And so that's how he rationalizes that death, in any kind of sense, is not bad. And I feel like this is one of the main functions of at least a religion like Christianity, because a religion like Christianity is supposed to provide an answer for death. It's supposed to make you not afraid to die. And that's what it's done for Frank. He's not afraid to die because he's just going to change location from the earth to the heavens. And that's it.
Yeah, this makes the whole would you kill your wife and kids even scarier, because he literally thinks he's just transporting them someplace else.
Well, yeah. Like, it definitely does make that decision. Casey was saying that it makes the decision of whether or not to kill your wife and child a lot scarier, because Frank thinks that he's not really killing them. He's just changing their location. Yeah, to be with God, which is better. So by not killing them, he's actually preventing them from being with God. This sounds like the makings of like a Lifetime documentary here. He was once a famed Christian apologist, and now he's on trial for murder. He murdered his wife and son to make them be with God because he thought that was better. Like, this is just totally fucking weird to me. And it makes me fear Frank. Like, I mean, I didn't like the guy before, but now, like, I'm literally scared of him because he's walking around, you know, and if he gets some kind of psychic message from God that says, hey, kill that fuck in the citation fucking needed shirt, and Frank, like John Wick, whips out a gun with a silencer on it and pegs me in the head, like that's scary. Should we have somebody walking around like that in this society? No. Right, honey, I don't think so. Like, this is a scary individual. People need to be watching Frank because he's liable to do something psychotic.
And God can do that anytime he wants. So thank you for your question.
It is stunning to me that massacre and genocide gets applauded in this building. God
Cody.
demands slaughter, massacre,
All right.
and genocide.
All right, Cody, there's nothing wrong with genocide if atheism's true.
That's just not true. Like, atheism has nothing to do with like a sense of morality or anything like that. So saying that there's nothing wrong on atheism with genocide is just a disingenuous statement to make. Yeah, you're right, honey. It's just fucking stupid. And it's totally ridiculous to suggest it, because there are ways in which you can ground murder, genocide, all of these things that we find abhorrent in modern society. There's ways to justify that without using God. Like I said before, the social contract theory, there's, how your actions affect the community around you, or the human species in general. Like, these are all ways in which we can ground these things without needing to invoke God. So, I mean, he's just saying that to be like a rhetorical device. It's something rhetorical that the audience is going to hang on to and potentially repeat later as an answer to something, when it doesn't really answer anything, because it's a dumb fucking statement.
Are you serious?
If atheism's true, there is nothing wrong with genocide.
Well, if Christianity's true, then in the appropriate context, there's nothing wrong with genocide, right? Like, he's adding more steps to it, obviously, but, or I guess I would be adding a few more steps to it, but it needs to be said, right? In this particular instance, because God doesn't want his people to be genocided, but he definitely wants everybody else to be genocided. At least all the ones that he's marked as needing to be genocided. And so it's fine to genocide those people, but it's not okay to genocide his own people. Like, that's the distinction that God makes in the Bible. So is genocide okay? Yes, as long as you correctly contextualize it. So at every turn, Frank seems to be trying to denigrate atheism, but at the same time, he doesn't realize that he's denigrating his own position as well, because his own position is just as subjective as atheism is as far as morality goes. Well, atheism being amoral, meaning that it doesn't have anything to do with morality. It's just whether or not you believe in God. So he's actually in a worse position than atheists are, I guess, because the atheist position, being amoral, doesn't have anything to say about morality, whereas Christianity tries to lay down these moral laws and actually prescribes genocide on occasion.
I am an atheist and I oppose genocide in every every way.
But that's just your personal opinion, because there's no standard beyond you which says it's wrong.
What says that we need a standard beyond us in order to say that it's wrong? Like, you can be, right, honey, fucking nothing. You can be objective about your moral foundation without it being, some kind of standard beyond you. You can be objective about it in that way. And the thing is that Frank convolutes being objective with absolute, or this, standard that's beyond him. He thinks that it's beyond him because it's laid out in the Bible, when in reality, modern apologetics has shaped the morality of the Bible in order to present this moral foundation that they like. And it's been molded and changed so many different times over the ages. It's just that currently, right now, it's in this one form that Frank is saying is absolute. If it were actually absolute, then this version of the Christian morality would be the same as the Christian morality that existed in the first century. But as we've come to find out, that's not the truth. The truth is, these are two totally different things. The morality that Christians exhibit now, at least that they claim is exhibited by the Bible now, is totally different than when the Bible was first conceived. So it's obviously not absolute. It's not beyond Frank or beyond humanity in general. In fact, God's morality is set by humanity.
The standard that says is correct, that I will help my fellow human up to and including you, especially you, doctor, that I would never harm anyone in this room.
Okay, I'm glad.
Atheism,
Cody.
Are you suggesting that atheism allows or or purports or wants genocide?
Yes, he would probably say yes. I think that it would prescribe that, or say that at least it would not be able to say that it's wrong. We got work my hands to the bone in the fidget minds says this is your brain on religion, and I would have to agree. Frank is a great example. I combined brain and Frank. That has never happened. No, I agree. Frank is definitely a good example of what happens to you when you're so willfully and toxically abused into your religion. That's definitely a true statement there.
I know you wouldn't say, you would never say that.
Yes, atheism does allow it. You can ask.
Wine money. I can actually just make wine. So atheism does not allow genocide. Atheism is amoral, so therefore it doesn't allow it. It would be like a lot like the DMV allows anybody to fly a plane. The DMV has nothing to do with a pilot's license. That's right? Like you don't go to I don't think you go to the DMV to get a pilot's license, but you get what I'm saying. Like there's a lot of different control mechanisms around flying and all this other stuff. It does not concern the DMV. There's no reason to bring up the DMV, so there's no reason to bring up atheism right now, other than atheists don't believe in a God, and Frank here only thinks that he only derives his morality from God, when in fact, whether it's Frank making up the rules or somebody else making up the rules and informing Frank, it's still humans are forming what God's moral foundation is, and then telling everybody else that is God's moral foundation. And I don't think it's one person that's doing this or anything like that. I think as a community, Christians, like as a community, leaders of the Christian community, they are the ones that form these moral foundations and then ascribe them to God. They are the ones manifesting this and then attributing to God. This is very blatantly seen in the divide between more progressive Christians and more fundamentalist leaning Christians that you see out there, because more progressive Christians, they come up with arguments for why LGBTQ people should be accepted into church, which I think is good. I think that more Christians out there need to be LGBTQ accepting, and they need to be more accepting of everybody in that respect. But it's definitely a highlight in how humans mold God's morality and then tell everybody else, this is God's morality. This is what God wants for these reasons. It's humans that mold that. It's not God.
Mao, you can ask Stalin, you can ask Pol Pot, because if there is no authority beyond the government, they are God.
Well, atheism and the government are not something that's intimately tied together. Like they're not deeply coupled. Although in the instances that he mentioned there, they are deeply coupled because they were implementing a sort of state atheism. And the difference between atheism and state atheism is pretty stark, because state atheism replaces the state as the thing that should be venerated over, whatever religions are out there. So yes, true, technically they are atheists, but at the same time, it's very different because they think the state should be worshipped and venerated just like a god would, or at least just like a religion would. And so that's completely different than atheists as a demographic in the population. And those are the two things that we're trying to separate here. Atheists as a demographic of the modern population, and then there are state atheism run countries where they venerate the government body like they would a church or a god. And so those are two totally different things. It was pointless for Frank to bring up Stalin, Pol Pot, Mao, and all of them. Because those are not representative of the atheist demographic now. They're not connected to them or anything like that, other than neither of them have anything to do with God. And so he's convoluting these ideas here in order to confuse the audience and to confuse the person that's questioning him. And I can't remember what he responds with here, but Frank, this is just so fucking disingenuous for you to do.
I could not possibly agree. I could not possibly disagree that those people were atheists. But as Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens would both argue, as you well know, none of those people slaughtered millions in the name of atheism. There are countless millions.
All right, Cody.
So Frank has got to stop him right here because he doesn't like answering too many hard questions and from one person. So I wouldn't have said the thing that he did. I definitely wouldn't have brought up Dawkins, and I really don't think Hitchens has anything to do with this. Not that I have a problem with Hitchens necessarily, but I feel like a better argument would be the distinction between state atheism and atheism as a demographic, like atheists as a demographic, and a modern sense of atheism in that it's just someone that doesn't believe in God, or atheism being not believing in God, that kind of thing. Kevin Beeler says Fran must have failed apologist boot camp. Or Frank must have failed apologist boot camp. I don't know. From what I've seen of apologists, Frank is ace in the boot camp right now because it's like, how dipshit can you be? And Frank's like, well, I don't know if I'd kill my wife and son or not, but I would follow God's word. And if it tells me to kill them, then hey, look at this red car over here. I don't want to answer that question because it makes me look like a psychopath.
This isn't a debate, okay?
I know.
I thank you for being here.
Doc.
But let me deal, because Cody, I love talking about this stuff, but there's a line of people behind you, and so we can't keep going back and forth. But I do want to answer your question about the Canaanites.
Is God immoral for massacre, slaughter, and racism and slavery?
Cody, look, we don't have time to deal with all those. Trust me, I have slides for every one of them, okay? Let me just deal with the Canaanite one, if you'd be so gracious as to sit down.
I would be so gracious. Thank you, Doctor.
And I'll deal with that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Doctor.
All right, thank you. So.
All right, he's about to get into his apologetic for the Canaanite extermination, which is going to be pretty horrible, I can already tell. But yeah, I definitely, in a Q&A kind of situation, you can't let somebody dominate. And so I totally understand Frank not wanting to get into those harder questions, because here's the thing, like, it's easy for somebody that's rational and reasonable and isn't a dipshit like Frank is to say, no, those things are horrible. Like, they're just utterly bad. Like, objectively, absolutely, we can say that those things are not good and bad. Like, it's easy for us to say it because there's an easy justification for it. But the problem that Frank runs into is that now he's got to come up with the religious apologetic to say, oh, well, this is actually fine. And that's much harder to do. So I agree, Frank needs time to make each point because he's got a lot of bullshit to spin, and he's got to have whole ass slides in order to spin this bullshit. So now, and that's what he's about to do. He's about to spin some bullshit.
You have been blessed by Christ. Now go forth and suck my dong.
You're going to get this, honey. Working my hands to the bone in the fidget mind says, Frank, like as in Frank saying this, look at the flowers, honey. Look at the flowers. Damn. All right. Oh, yes, definitely that little monster was definitely a psycho.
As I just mentioned, with the Canaanite issue, if there's no God, why would any Old Testament atrocity be wrong? But
well, I mean, like, I like how he put atrocity in quotes in that. Like, if we go back to the slide just a couple seconds, atrocity. Like, he's putting atrocity in quotes. The atrocity that we're talking about is fucking genocide. We're talking about utterly destroying an entire people here, whether that's the Canaanites or the Midianites or the Jebusites or anybody that God lists that should be utterly destroyed. God specifically said, you need to kill every man, woman, and child in these groups, right? So it's not just killing the fighting men. It's not just killing the governmental bodies of these societies. It's not just doing that. It's literally exterminating the entire group of people, with the exception that in Numbers 31, they keep all of the young virgin girls, obviously not for sex reasons, because that's why the virgin part really matters to the statements that God makes. Has nothing to do with sex, even though he says virgin girls are to be taken as spoils of war. Yeah, why would it matter?
Jesus loves the little children, maybe a little too much.
Right, honey. Why would it matter if virgin had nothing to do with it? You know? So these are the things that he's putting in atrocity, in quotes there. Also, if there is no God, it says nothing about morality. But even if there is a God, it's very obvious that throughout the ages, the different takes on God's morality proves that it doesn't matter whether or not there is a God or not. Because humans are going to make up their own moral decisions. They are going to make up their own moral rules. They are going to do these things on their own. They may use God as a justification for it, but it's not rooted in God. It's not like God has come down in his toga and told everybody like, hey, it's really bad to kill people unless I directly tell you to. So unless you see my hairy balls, then that means that you shouldn't do it. Like, it's not that God said any of that. It's people that are interpreting what God is saying in his holy book that's been manipulated by man, for one. For two, it's even though the Bible's been manipulated by men are still manipulating what God wants you to do. So it's not really God that wants you to do anything. It's some jackass at some point in time that said God wants to do this or wants you to do this. And so therefore that became the tradition that everybody followed. It's bullshit.
God, why would any Old Testament atrocity be wrong? But Cody is correct about this. He has a fair point to ask me, despite the fact that he, being an atheist, has no objective standard by which to judge anything right or wrong. He is correct to ask me, you're saying your God is a God of love, so why does he do such things? So that's a fair question, okay? All right. Secondly, though, is God arbitrary, or does he give reasons in the Old Testament for judging people?
Okay, so Frank classifies God committing heinous actions as judging people. I don't know about y'all, but when I judge the fuck out of somebody, whether it be online or in real life, I don't end up killing them. Like, that's not judgment. Like, he's talking about judgment in the idea of like a judge passing down some kind of innocent or guilty kind of thing. And then that person ended up going to like the electric chair and being electrocuted and dying. That's what Frank has in mind here for judging people. That's what he's calling judging people. But like, let me ask you this. Maybe I should ask you this, honey. Tell me if this would be reasonable, okay? If I woke up one morning and as you're making me coffee, I come in there and I just punch you really hard in the face. I'm not saying that I would. I love you. I would never hurt you. Okay, good. I feel like for legal reasons I need to say that. But if I just punched you while you're making coffee, but I'm like, oh, but I've got a good reason for it. You know, you cheated on me in a dream. And you kind of deserved it. Like, that's judgment, right? And I doled out that judgment. And I had a reason for it. But does that really justify the action? Of course, Casey's over there like, no, it doesn't. That's fucking dumb. My point is that, oh yeah, I made the mistake of doing it while she was making coffee. But just because God has reasons, does that make it okay for him to order the genocide of an entire group of people? I feel like at that point, you have to give me the concrete reason why genocide is okay at that point. And the only thing that Frank can say here is that, well, that's just God's judgment. So he has no answer, at least no effective answer for that question. Like, what is the one reason why an entire group of people should be genocided? And that he either has to bullshit and not give you an answer like I just demonstrated, or he has to show how shitty he is and make up some kind of reason that he thinks is okay for killing an entire group of people. My bet is that he would say, well, I don't know what the reason is, but God has a good reason. And that's effectively a non-answer.
Because that's what it is in the Old Testament. It's judging. God is not a cosmic mafia boss. He doesn't wake up one day and say, Canaanites, I want them dead. No.
I mean, he kind of did. Like, I mean, that's kind of what, like, it was literally the Canaanites are fucking the Israelites, and God woke up and is like, oh, wait, what the fuck? No. You got to kill those people. Like, that was it. And like the only reason why he commanded genocide was because they were just living in areas that the Israelites wanted to populate in. Like, that's literally it. Who's Your Buddy says, I'm not too worried about a God that supposedly invents beavers and then said they were fish. Yeah, that's pretty fucking stupid.
There's a reason that he has decided to push the Canaanites out of the land, and it's because...
What are you doing? I blew my load.
You blew your load, honey.
Because they've had 400 years of iniquity, including murdering their children, sacrificing their children on the molten hot metal god Molech.
I don't know if y'all remember. I don't know if y'all remember at all, but like God in the Bible says that you are to kill everybody, men and women, young and old. And in the Midianite extermination, he literally says kill everybody. And he only prescribed later, after they disobeyed God and didn't kill everybody, they because the Israelites, what they did in the Midianite extermination, they just basically killed all the fighting men. They killed all of them and then kept alive the women, the children, like all the children. Oh, apparently I missed Daniel M. Asking something there. So
you have been blessed by Christ. Now go forth and suck my dong. I don't know if y'all know this, but when you get to heaven, your moral actions are not judged. You're only judged for believing in me. Thank you.
Daniel M asked, is Frank an actual PhD or is it a paper mill thing? Asking honestly. I'm not sure. I don't think that it's a paper mill. I would have to do some serious research into his background in order to know. My guess is that like there's different levels to apologetics, right? So there's paper mill where you pretty much just pay and you get like, you know, your degree in apologetics or whatever. And then there's like one level up from that, you know, where you actually have to do a little bit of work. But I mean, like it's essentially a paper mill with more steps. And then you have, you know, higher level apologetics that, you know, mimic a lot of like university work and all this other stuff. And so like, I don't know at what level that is, but I think that it's gotta be above paper mill, I think for Frank, but I'm not sure. And then we got Michael Beverly who says, no, God gave them 400-year warning. They could have left. And WLC and Turek have said animal sex, child sacrifice, and other atrocities brought the judgment. Daniel M says, did you see my last question? I didn't hear it. No, I didn't read it, so that's why I read it just then. Thank you so much there, Daniel. I appreciate you so much for sending in the super chats there. And thank you, Michael, for sending in yours as well as Hoosier. I don't know if I said thanks to Hoosier Buddy earlier. But yeah, so earlier I pointed out how the Israelites are to kill everything, including babies. And so, like, Frank is now saying, oh, well, you know, these Canaanites were sacrificing babies to Molech, right? And so because they were sacrificing babies to Molech, God wants to kill them. That is not the reason why God gives for, wanting to take out the Canaanites. The Canaanites were inhabiting a land that God was going to give to them. And so God said, oh, you're going to kill all these groups of people, utterly destroy them no matter what. And he lists off several. It's not because of the child sacrifice. It's not because of any of that. It's simply because they were inhabiting a land that God meant to give to the Israelites. That's it. For one, as far as the Canaanites go. But for two, why, if God's intent was to stop the child sacrifice, why would God then order the Israelites to go in and kill everybody, including the babies, the small children, all of them, and in some instances, only save young virgin girls for non-sex reasons, obviously. Why would he then do that? Like, why did God call for the murder of babies if he's trying to save the babies? If death is just simply being transported from one place to another, how is the Israelites murdering these pagan babies going to transport them from the earth to God's presence? They would be sending them directly to hell because they haven't been circumcised, or anything like that. They haven't gone through any of the Jewish ceremonies or anything of that nature. How is this doing a good thing for them? This argument makes no sense.
And it wasn't just the Old Testament that talks about this. The Greek writer Plutarch says that when the Canaanites would do this, the drummers in the town would pound their drums louder so the children or the parents couldn't hear the screams of their own children being sacrificed. Also, I hear this quite a bit. Why complain that God doesn't stop evil, but then complain when he does?
I mean, I don't see it as complaining that he's trying to stop evil. Like, it's not like I wouldn't be complaining if God popped into his existence for a microsecond, popped a rapist in the dick before he starts to rape a woman, and then pops out of existence. Like, we're not complaining about that. Like, that's not our complaint. It's not like God popped into existence, or even in this case, ordered something that was reasonable. Like, I feel like punching a rapist in the dick is reasonable. I don't know about anybody else, but I mean, if I had the chance, I'd punch one in the dick. But I'm just saying that, like, that's not what we're complaining. Like, it's not that God is stopping something evil. God is ordering evil in order to combat this evil that they say is going on, which I'm not trying to dispute whether or not the Canaanites were doing baby sacrifices. I think that there's a pretty healthy record of them doing baby sacrifices, but also just keep in mind that the Israelites are just an offshoot of Canaanites. And so basically the Israelites left the Canaanites, became the Israelites, and then was like, you know what, fuck them Canaanites. And then they went back and killed the Canaanites. But there's also Canaanites still around, so obviously they didn't kill everybody. But it was an attempted genocide. Like, their intent was to genocide the Canaanites. But my entire point is that you can't command an evil action and think it's good just because you're pitting it against another evil action. Two evils don't make a fucking saint, okay?
In other words, sometimes atheists will say, why didn't God stop such and such a tragedy? Yet here, God sees that this culture is so degraded that he finally says these people must be stopped, and he sends the Israelites in to stop them, and now atheists are complaining about it.
Well, I would contest this whole idea that God saw child sacrifice as degradation of society, like as really a bad thing. The real bad thing that God saw in this whole child sacrifice bit was that they weren't sacrificing children to him, they were sacrificing children to Baal. And so, or Molech, sorry, not Baal, but Molech. Other groups were sacrificing other things to Baal. But the fact that the Jephthah story exists proves that God doesn't inherently have a problem with child sacrifice. Child sacrifice seemed to be, at least as far as the Bible goes, somewhat part of Israelite society in certain respects. And so what that means is that God really isn't offended by the child sacrifice. He's offended that children weren't being sacrificed to him, because that is what really pisses him off, is when you don't sacrifice things to him. That's what he cares about, whether or not it's being done for him. Like if you start sucking somebody's dick, for God, God would be perfectly fine with it. So I mean, I really don't understand why Christians get all so upset about, different sexual things. But I feel like if you're like, well, I'm doing this for God, so I feel like God wouldn't mind. He'd get up there and be like, oh, I see you suck dick for me. Good on you.
And the question I always ask people is, God committing murder by ending lives on earth? And the answer is no. God doesn't murder anyone. He can't murder anyone. He is the creator of life. He can resurrect it.
I mean, I feel like this is kind of akin to, well, can you really convict a mafia boss of murder when he's just ordering people to murder other people? And, or like, well, you can't convict me of any wrongdoing just because I put the psychopath in the middle of all these people and he killed everybody. And like, I created the conditions for this mass mayhem to happen. Well, I don't think that in American court you can really convict somebody for doing that or any of those kind of things. You still bear responsibility for it. Now, in this particular instance, we're not talking about God directly committing the murder. God's like the mafia boss, and God has directed his mafia army to go and kill people. So did God do it? No. But did God create the situation, or did God order it? Totally. Is God ultimately responsible for it? Yes, he is. So whether or not you consider it murder, it's still humans killing other humans, which is something that he said is murder or killing and is wrong. But the one caveat here is that, well, God is commanding it, so therefore it makes it okay. And that's the scary part of this theology, because that means that as long as God is commanding it, that means it's okay, and it's divorced from our sense of morality.
Only people who are other creations can commit murder. When God ends somebody's life, it's not murder. And as I mentioned a minute ago, God has the right to usher people into the next life whenever he wants. Whether we're 82 or 2 years old, that's up to him.
It doesn't, like, whether you're a baby or you're 82 years old, if God kills you, if you die, you die. This is some scary shit, like, coming from Frank, because, like, if God orders you to kill a baby, apparently that's no different than killing an 82-year-old person. And, to Frank, you should kill a 2-year-old or an 82-year-old because God wanted you to kill them. I feel like also this would really factor in a weird way into modern legal battles and legal courts, because it's like, well, it's not really me that killed him. I mean, I know I pulled the trigger and everything, but God is in control of everything. So really, God killed him. And that's not wrong. Like, I feel like the logic I feel would be sound on Frank Turek's assumptions here. It's not sound in reality, right? Like, it's not, it may be a valid argument, but it's not a sound argument. And so this is just scary to hear from Frank.
People never die, they just change location. And we also need to remember that the Old Testament theocracy was unique and temporary. It was not the ideal for all time, but the means to a promised new covenant.
Where he killed somebody in order to change his mind. I feel like he's just making shit up at this point in order to specially plead for God. That's all that amounts to. Because saying that, oh, the Old Testament was temporary, that is a retcon for the Bible. Because it's obviously a retcon. Because if that were the case, then as soon as people started preaching the New Testament, as soon as people became Christian, then everything from the Old Testament would cease to matter. Right? And so because that didn't happen until well into, the 1800s or so, because that didn't happen until then, I feel like Frank's entire argument's bullshit.
And the best book on this topic is by Paul Copan, Is God a Moral Monster? And Cody's actually bringing up good questions that Christians need to deal with. And
So I do have a live stream with Dr. Josh Bowen where we actually cover Paul Copan on this particular topic of God being a moral monster or God commanding genocide or slavery or something like that. You want to go and check it out, please do, because Dr. Bowen's awesome when it comes to this particular topic of Old Testament atrocities. But essentially, Paul Copan is a really bad scholar to listen to on this because he's obviously got heavy religious bias in it, and it's basically a sophisticated apologetic book. And Paul Copan is a sophisticated apologist, more so than like Frank Turek, I would say. Frank Turek is like a Cracker Jack box like scholar, a doctor, right? Paul Copan, I feel like has gone to a little bit more lengths in order to gain the recognition and the title that he has. He's got a bit more distinguished recognition in the Christian community than like Frank Turek has. And so, I mean, but he's still just as bad as Frank Turek on this.
Copan goes through all of those issues. One is the Canaanites, another slavery, these kinds of issues. And you can get that book if you want to go further. But this is not genocide. It's actually judgment. Why? How do I know? Because God did the same thing to Israel.
It's still genocide. God did not genocide Israel. And the judgment that he's talking about here is just God doing shitty shit for God reasons. Like whatever personal reasons he has in the Bible, that's the reason why he does shitty shit. This is not a good argument, and this is not a convincing argument whatsoever for excusing God's actions in the Old Testament.
God took out the Israelites through the Babylonians and the Assyrians, and he also took out the Israelites after they worshiped the golden calf. It was judgment, not genocide.
Technically, those were punishments, not judgment. Well, I mean, I guess you could say God judged them in a way, but I mean, it was a punishment. And that punishment was hiring mercenaries in order to utterly fuck them up, which is still wrong. Like, that's not even touching on the topic here. Like, yes, so what? God ordered mercenaries to fuck up the Israelites, and God did it to his own people. That just makes it fucking worse, Frank. Anyways, that's it for the video tonight. All in all, I don't find Frank's arguments to be all that persuasive. They're actually pretty pathetic in my opinion. I feel like Frank really showed a lot of his cards tonight in that he's so abused into the religion of Christianity that he's sort of developed a almost Stockholm syndrome kind of attitude about it, in that he thinks that it's a good thing to be judged by God, or that God judging people is not bad. So he makes up all kinds of excuses for why it's not bad. And these excuses are just horrible excuses in order to excuse God from committing objectively horrible actions. So Frank is a horrible apologist, and I would be deeply afraid to ever meet that man. Like, he seems like nearly a psychopath, if not a psychopath. Anyways, that's going to be it for me tonight. If you will, please go down below. Let me know what y'all thought about this video. I'd really love to hear what y'all think about Frank and his position. Do you think that he's a psychopath? Or do you think that he's just a true, good Christian, out there being a good apologist for Christianity? Let me know down below. And while you're down there, why don't you smash that like button and subscribe if you like this kind of content. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens. But don't go, because if you don't know, we do have the Skeptic Mafia comments to go through. I don't think that there were too many of the Skeptic Mafia that commented, but we will go through a few of these. Yeah, so, I mean, we've only got a couple. Boom. All right, first up, we've got Cody Beeler, which we do not have anybody help for review. First up is Cody Beeler, who says, Kevin Beeler, not Cody, sorry, Kevin Beeler. Cody was a very impressive young man who knew his shit very well and was not afraid to stand up to Frank Turek. Frank, on the other hand, was so rattled by the questioning that he went on the defensive by spewing a bunch of ridiculous claims that no rational person could believe. Meanwhile, the maverick fuckhead tried to make sense of it as, well, but he was no better than Frank at trying to make sense of the unsensible. It was kind of funny watching these two completely botch their spin about how the great and powerful God loved us so much that he committed murder, genocide, and enslavement just to show us. The only way they could redeem themselves, they thought, was by talking as fast and loud as they could. Cannot wait to see how GE and the mafiosos react to this stupid attempt to explain themselves. And then Drew's book review says, I bet this apologist gets it right and the atheist ends up looking so bad and converts. That's how it always works, right? Right? Lol. I look forward to seeing the rebuttal. What I'm sure is a really good response to this atheist. Note the sarcasm. I definitely note the sarcasm. Thank you so much there, Drew and Kevin, for your comments on this video. But that's all for the Skeptic Mafia comments about the video tonight. That was probably because I didn't put it up until a little late, and I was really busy this week and wasn't able to get out a selection, for the Mafia to pick from. So I'll do better about that next week. But in any case, we are going to be heading out right now. I got to get my son to bed. I'm actually finishing on time tonight, so that works out for me. And I guess I'll just see you heathens later. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice. Bye, heathens.